Carson Price for Monday, March 3rd, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And as always, the show a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Carson alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We have a big show planned for you. First, did you have a nice weekend? In Denver, right?
Yes. Yeah, the weather was very nice. It was like 20 degrees Celsius during the day and then like -3 at night, but it was good enough. And I got to see a great MLS match, 3-3 game, back and forth.
I saw the scoreline there.
Whitecaps fans got to see a good one, too. More on that coming up a little bit later. Not the same can be said about Canucks fans.
No.
How was your weekend, by the way? I know you had a golf round.
I had a marvelous round of golf at Northlands with our buddy Walter Cosman of the Vancouver Canadians. You know, you book a tee time a week or so out, and you just start crossing your fingers for weather. You know,
you won the lottery there.
Because the forecast is going to change a couple times. Yeah. But what a spectacular weekend. Had a ton of fun out there at Northlands yesterday. Thank you to Jamie for joining our group, part of the grounds crew there, and boys, it in fantastic shape. Okay, Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Who do you want traded by Friday's deadline? Brock Boeser, Elias Pettersson, both or neither? You can vote at the Carson Price X channels and the YouTube channel. You get first crack. Who do you want out of here?
Oh, man, I flip-flop a ton right now on the Elias Pettersson question because as we have talked about all week last week, you know, the path to finding a top six center, it seems almost impossible at times.
Top two center.
In the top six, you know what I mean?
I hate that term. Like, there's only four centers. It's a top two center.
Okay, top two center.
I will draw the line there this week. And beyond.
So, I was going back and forth.
He's really struggling with this one.
I am. I like it, and this is really the franchise pivots on this decision.
It
being
sure
right.
does.
Like it fully does. And you know, I went back and forth with Jay Fresh Hockey on Twitter today about it, and their point was, you know, if you trade him for a bunch of pieces. Mm-hmm. Like you are no further ahead. You're most likely not getting a top two center out of those pieces. Or if you are, it's something that blossoms way down the road.
Yeah. Which isn't in the Quinn Hughes timeline.
No.
That's important.
No. Yeah. So you've got all this cap space where you could theoretically add, but you have to give to. I honestly, trade Brock Boeser.
I voted Boeser as well. He's been a fantastic Canuck. We've all gotten to feel like we know Brock Boeser, have followed his personal story. He grew up before our eyes. I just have trouble with the notion of Brock Boeser walking out the door for no return. I think he's got trade value. I think he's got pretty good trade value.
What does that mean to you? What do you when you say that? What's your dream scenario there for trade value?
What Cam Robinson said to us was it last week or the week before? If you can get a first round pick and a B to A level prospect, I'm absolutely making that deal. I probably make the deal for something short of that. And here's why, Blake. As I mentioned last week, there was a time earlier this year. I'm not big on get into the playoffs and anything can happen to begin with. But there was a time earlier this year where I thought, okay, this might apply more so to this Vancouver Canuck team than most wild cards, and that's because they had the two centers, they have the world's best defenseman, they have the two goaltenders. Mm-hmm. Well, you look at it now, do they have even one centerman? And if they do, is his name Philip Hedl, not Elias Pettersson. The best defenseman in the world has got yet another injury, and they got one goalie now. until Thatcher Demko proves otherwise. So, yeah, I'm not subscribing to anything can happen, or if you do still want to think anything can happen, fair enough, but winning 4 rounds isn't happening. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Like, could I see them upsetting a Winnipeg or even a Vegas in the first round? Yeah, absolutely. Can I see them winning 3 rounds beyond that? No, it's crazy talk. Not this team. So I voted Boeser just because, look, this is the pressure point Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Elias, you have the summer or pre-July 1st to get something done there, and you also be trading Elias at such low value, right? When you get to the summer, potentially more teams get involved. And I think you have to give yourself the widest market possible to make the best Elias Pettersson trade you can if you're making an Elias Pettersson trade.
Is any part of you willing to go past July 1st with Elias Pettersson? Or has that ship sailed in your mind?
Well, I would like to see how the remainder of the season ends.
Okay.
I've got time, so I'm going to use it.
Okay.
But right now I would be inclined to trade, yes, because the largest crime would be to hang on to a contract that rich for a player who doesn't bring you close to that value.
But you don't retain.
I would make a worse trade. Like I would make I would rather make a bad trade for Elias than just sit there sucking on 11.6 year after year while he underperforms.
But if I'm the Canucks, I'm also not retaining $3 million.
I'm not. You cannot retain on a contract that has 6 to 7. No, absolutely not. No, you don't. You only have 3 retention spots to begin with, so you're not going to gum one of those up for 6-7 years. Forget it. No, it's crazy talk. The daily poll question is a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, speaking of, and Surrey Mitsubishi wants to get EP40 back on top. Everyone at the dealership beyond rallying around him. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 the next day on any new or used vehicle. If he gets 2 points, you can get into Surrey Mitsubishi, save $1,000, 5 points, $2,500. We're a long way from that, but you know what I'm saying. You got to mention us. Secure some price, and the offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it, and visit them at 13820 104th Avenue. I don't believe he has cost our friend Daniel in the Surrey Mitsubishi, folks.
Not a lot of money.
So far. We'll see where this goes. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing. I had some of the Amigos crisp lager this weekend from Neighborhood Brewing. Love that.
Getting towards that season.
Foolish Winery, 1-4 road trip, could have sunk their playoff chances, but the teams around them keep losing too. They find themselves just on the outside of the playoff bar in the West.
By tiebreaker only.
Yeah. Calgary wasn't great shakes this way. The thing was Saturday. Everybody in their orbit lost.
So let's do the math here. If they go 2-2-1, by virtue of their road record right now, even that would have been disappointing at 2-2-1. One of the best road records in the league going into this road trip.
Yeah, but it's the home record and the road record, I suspect, will regress towards the mean here. But I hear what you're saying.
But going 500, going 2-2-1 on a road trip is not great shakes. If they go 2-2-1, they are at 68 points. They are 2 back of the Kings, and they are 3 clear of the Flames. They'd be 4 back of the Avalanche, but with a game in hand. Like, the world would have been their oyster at 2-2-1.
Yeah, and so much, of course, was put into the 7-8 game stretch after the Four Nations break and what that would do in terms of governance of the Canucks deadline activities. More on that in a second, but they're outscored 18-10 on this trip. 9-0 in third periods, as J-Pat notes. They had a lead in the second period in every single game of the trip. Every single game of the trip.
That's the thing.
And like, talking hockey last year would have closed close that down, right? Yep. You've been walking out with points. Alas, no. You got the win in overtime against LA, and then nada the rest of the way out after a 6-3 loss against the Kraken. Hughes doesn't play the final 10 minutes. He missed practice Sunday. He's technically day-to-day. Demko is back skating, but we'll see. Off day today. We'll see if there's any chance he's going to play. I wouldn't think so. They are going to practice Tuesday. If there's any chance he's going to play the Ducks game on Wednesday or the Minnesota game on Friday. Let's hear from Coach Tocchet, who updated both gentlemen and their status at practice on Sunday.
He tweaked something else, and it was more of a kind of precautionary. So kind of a maintenance day, but we'll see how he is tomorrow and go from there. We have a day off tomorrow, and then we'll see if he gets in next Tuesday.
Do you believe that he supposedly had
That wasn't it. No.
So it wasn't that, it's something else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any update on Demko?
Demko just started skating a few days ago, so I think he's on the ice. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 times just to skate. So I think they'll ramp it up. So I don't know exactly when, but at least he's skating. Just started skating.
As it pertains to Hughes, if it's a small knock and it's precautionary, don't put him in practice tomorrow.
No.
That man does not need another hockey practice.
No.
I would have him skip the game day skate for him. He'll probably want to do that one, but he does not need to practice tomorrow.
Garland, DeBrusk, and Suter each scored 2 goals on the trip to lead the team. Garland, Meyer, Suter, and Hedl were 3 points in 5 games on the trip. Pettersson and Boeser, 1 assist apiece. No shots in Seattle. No goals on the trip. Rick Tocchet was asked yesterday on what his stars can do to get going a little more. Here's what Coach had to say.
We had a couple of guys, you're down the pipe, you got to shoot the puck. There's no reason to pass. And that's why I have a tough time with confidence. I'd rather just rip the shot, but rip it and hit the net. We have people going to the net. That's how you get back. That's how you get out of slumps. It's, from my experience and even my career, you're not going to get a pretty goal to get out of a slump. It's usually off of your skate. It's a 3-foot shot, rebound goal, but you got to get there. And you got to be willing to have the courage to shoot those pucks, but you got to move your feet. Like I said, everybody wants all these fancy offensive system. I just came from 4 Nations. Connor McDavid just attacks and he shoots the puck. There's no tic-tac-toes. It's the same thing with us. We got to deliver pucks to the net. You got to be willing to get there, and you got to be willing to rip pucks and have all those details to do that.
Couple of things there that stand out. First of all, and God bless Coach and his choice of words, but how much courage does it take to shoot a puck?
No.
That's not an act of bravery in my books.
No.
Shoot the fucking puck.
In
You're
fact,
a hockey player.
On a lot of teams, in a lot of cases,
runners run.
You ask players not to be selfish. In minor hockey, you're telling kids, guys, sometimes you got to pass.
And honestly, Tocchet again has forgotten more about hockey than all of us will ever know. But maybe it is a beautiful goal in the corner that gets you out of the slump. Who cares? So long as it goes in the net. But to put it in the net, you do actually have to shoot it. Shooting begets goals.
It's too bad.
Not
because,
shooting, no goals.
Again, we've said how pivotal his performance, Pettersson's performance, is to all this. But they're not getting the same production out of Hedl that JT Miller is giving the New York Rangers right now. But Hedl is on a career pace as a Vancouver Canuck.
Small sample, but I hear
Small
you.
sample, but 6 points in 9 games is better than any pace in any season he's had with the New York Rangers. So he's doing fine.
Amounts to what? 55, 54 points or so, right? In a season.
So he's doing just fine.
Yep.
He is. He's doing exactly what you would hope he would do when you acquired him.
If Pettersson and Boeser are scoring, they probably get to your 2-2-1 on the road trip.
If not 3-1-1 or something like that.
The second thing, was there a slight pushback on system there from Coach? Did you hear that? It's not about system.
Well, again,
Connor McDavid. Are we starting to get a little bit sensitive? Are we starting to understand the conversation about how a portion of this fan base absolutely hates watching Rick talk at hockey right now?
And I think it's a total valid criticism by the fans and media that say that. Mm-hmm. From his perspective, if you put yourself in his shoes, he's going to say, if the 100-point guy isn't on a 45-point pace, I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, and he's not wrong.
Right. I think, but both are true.
Yeah. More later in the show on Brock Boeser with both Darren Dreger and Jeff Paterson. But I think the one thing that we've gotten to know about Brock over the years is he's a feeler. He has worn emotions on his sleeve. And whether all these trade rumors and all this uncertainty about his career, and he came out last week and he gave Coos an interview. He did an IMAC interview where he said he was doing pretty well because he figures, look, one of three things can happen, and he's resigned himself to sort of take the pressure off. But actions speak louder than words, and he absolutely looks affected, not, I think, just by the trade rumors, but everything that went on this year. It was a dysfunctional locker room. Brock Boeser is the senior Vancouver Canuck in that dressing room. Brock Boeser, as we talked about earlier in the season, he seemingly moves between all circles and all cliques in that room. Came on up with Elias and with Quinn and the young guys, related to and hung out with JT and the American guys in the room, Tyler Meyer. You could see Brock moving effortlessly, seamlessly through all the different factions and fractions that you have in a dressing room, and I think it's probably taken its toll on him this year. As for the game Saturday, they finally score some goals, but 3 deflected pucks past Kevin Lankinen. Fantastic to see Dakota Joshua score a beautiful goal like that, shorthanded and really nice feed from Drew O'Connor. I mean, those two guys looked like accomplished NHL scorers coming down on that 2-on-1, and so much has come so difficult for the Vancouver Canucks this year, particularly scoring goals. It was great to have just a moment where you could sit back, Blake, and bask in a pretty goal and the way hockey is supposed to be played.
Well, also as a throwback to last year, the depth guys were there. Suter and Joshua both get goals, and both nice. Suter's goals not to be thrown away either.
No,
it was a very nice goal.
He's been quite good of late,
and he gets to 16 on the season, new career high for him. And for Joshua, I mean we started to see it. The last 5 games, Joshua's been a lot better. But the thing that we marveled at last year and the year even before, he's got really nice hands. But the speed wasn't there. The skating wasn't there this season. And just the instincts maybe. But now with a little bit of success and scoring a nice goal again, if the wind can get under the wings of Joshua here, again, you're going to have to nickel and dime your way up to make up for the lack of scoring for Pettersson. That's going to be their hope.
Yes.
That everybody else not named Pettersson then has an uptick here in the final 20 games.
Yeah, and that goes for Dakota Joshua. And you know what? Finishing this season strong, I think, would further validate the contract extension that he got and make the Canucks and their fans feel a little bit better about the 3 years remaining on that deal, because it is just the 7 points in 35 games this season. As for, Nils Höglander probably belongs on that list too, Blake, because, of course, his totals have been sagging as well. Just on Pius Suter for a second, UFA to B. If someone gives you a second-round pick for Suter this week, you making that deal?
Well, the Canucks aren't making that deal, I don't think. I don't think the Canucks
I think you're probably right there, because I think they want to keep their playoff hopes as strong as possible. Are you making that deal?
If it's
Sounds like you are.
If it's a really high pick in the second round, I'm thinking about it. If it's
those are usually non-contenders.
But you could have an acquired second rounder.
Although I must say, some of those picks have been
traded. Yeah,
except to non. Yeah. Montreal, Pittsburgh, their second-round pick belongs to Montreal, but they're probably not giving up a pick.
No.
Anaheim's second belongs to Philly, but they're probably not giving up.
No.
St. Louis's pick belongs to Edmonton. It would stand 41st right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so something like that. But
Boston's pick belongs to Washington, 42
but at
right now.
58th, 59th, nah, probably not bother.
Tampa owns 43 right now. It belongs to Utah. So, yeah,
I think a little bit more about those, yeah.
Maybe there's some possibilities. There are some possibilities there. And I say that because you wonder if they lose Wednesday against Anaheim, are Rutherford and Alvin able to have a conversation with the owner and just say, look, we may still get there, but we all know this team ain't winning. And maybe they get a little more flexibility to be sellers by Friday. We shall see. What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to?
Well, because the hockey team's not giving you good times, let Neighborhood Brewing give you the good times.
Did that Saturday.
Good Times West Coast IPA. It's a bold, crisp, delicious brew made with Simcoe, Citra, Mosaic hops, big tropical citrus pine notes. It is a beauty. Good Times via Neighborhood Brewing, because it's not happening on your screen from the hockey team.
Elliot Friedman reported on Hockey Night in Canada that the Canucks are looking to add a forward and don't want to weaken their chances of the postseason. As you'll hear from Darren Dreger coming up, he tells us they're hunting guys with term.
That aren't on the trade bait board.
Yeah, pretty interesting there. Hunting center icemen with term who haven't necessarily populated these trade bait boards. I wonder whether that's Ottawa Senators centerman Josh Norris, Quinn Hughes' best friend. There has long been talk that the Senators are willing to move Josh Norris. There were two reasons. Number one, guy's had a devil of a time with the shoulder. There have been a couple of big injuries there. There have been some other injuries as well. So the brittleness is wearing on them. But also they feel like they have an in-house replacement there. They really like Shane Pinto. They're going to try and get him on a long-term deal in the offseason. And Ridley Gregg, a one-time first-round pick who has been playing wing there, they think he can move into the middle. They feel good about their center ice depth with Tim Stützle at the top of the depth chart there.
So what are you trading to get him, though?
Well, it's a significant trade.
That's Wieland or Lekramaki.
Probably. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's even if they want futures, but they're leaking some oil there. The Senators are in the Eastern Conference playoff chase. They have gotten more injuries over the course of the week. Boy, they struggled with San Jose on Saturday. So that's not Dreger talking. That's me talking. I do wonder whether Operation Keep Quinn Happy has targeting and acquiring Josh Norris, his best friend, from the Senators as part of the program.
I will say this, and again, we're just going to use Norris as an example, and it's a good example because of the affiliation with Hughes.
There's been some scuttlebutt about him being traded, but it's mostly been local. He hasn't really been on the big trade boards or anything like that.
But let me say this. If you get a guy like a Norris, who's young enough, there's a reason why he would be traded, the durability.
Yep.
But if you get a guy like that, I am emboldened at that point. And again, you're not trading Pettersson as part of the deal. You're just adding him effectively to the roster as is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm emboldened at that point to hold on to Elias Pettersson. If you have cushion for center ice production at that point in both Hedl and player X, in this case it would have been Norris, I am emboldened to hold on to Pettersson past July 1st and roll the dice. He would be potentially, in the worst case scenario, Matt, he would be the highest paid third line center by a country mile. But at least there would still be, again, scoring cushion. You wouldn't have the most prolific center ice core in the league.
No.
But it would be NHL caliber at least.
Well, yeah, that as you've talked about, that is the other way to go here. If you don't have the prolific scorers that top your center depth chart slotted 1 and 2, then the next best thing is to slot 3 very capable two-way players down the center ice depth chart and see if that's good enough with the goal contributions that you get from the defense and off the flank.
Yeah, you have to you pound your chest and say we're the best team in the league, and may or may not be true, but you'd say we're the best defense core in the league and goaltending tandem in the league.
Yes, we're going to make our mark with goal prevention and score just enough. We're just not going to be your classic 2 playmaking, straws that stir the drink center iceman creating all the offense through the top 6. That's
one
your
path.
Other option.
It's one path to keep this window alive and ticking.
Yeah. I assume Dreger doesn't mean Mittelstadt because Mittelstadt has been on trade boards, but I do wonder there because that is a center iceman with term. Braden Shen, St. Louis, is close to the playoff bar. Everything that we've heard from the insiders on Doug Armstrong in St. Louis in that unless he's made a Godfather offer on Braden Shen, he is not going to be making that move now, and he doesn't really have to. They want to keep playoff hopes alive in the final quarter of the season, right? They want to sell tickets and keep that dream alive for their team. Plus, he's got a ton of time to deal with that in the summer if he wants to move off from Braden Shen and feels like the team needs some retooling.
Well, and from a Canucks side, they're just not renting. They're not going to rent anybody.
Well, but Shen's got term, but I hear what you're saying.
Shen's got his right. He does.
Yes. Yeah, but no, that's why
age term.
Yeah, like Yanni Gourde, Trent Frederick. There are rental centermen out there, but they just don't make a lot of sense for the Canucks. In fact, Blake, and we'll ask JPat this later in the show. Are you prepared for an absolutely nada deadline from the Canucks? Like, they don't make a single NHL move.
No, I'm not. I understand why you would bring that topic up, but I think this group will be compelled to do something. Yeah. If not,
they're itchy trigger fingers there. This is Rutherford and Alvin, but there's part of me that wonders now. Look, if you're dealing with Pettersson in the offseason, if you're evaluating a new injury to Quinn Hughes,
yeah.
If you just want to keep Boeser as your own rental because you don't want to punt, ditto Suter and Forbert to a degree, and you don't want to pay for rentals and you can't bring back the center iceman with term, Soucy says no on the no move. Like, I'm wondering if there's a world where they do zip absolutely nothing between now.
This group, I think they make a move to justify their existence, if not anything else.
We made a trade for the sake of a trade to justify our bloated front office.
It's like going into a casino. You're not feeling lucky, but you're like, I'm going to throw something down this slot machine. I'm going to pull one.
I feel compelled.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a buck in the slot machine, or I'm going to go put a chip on the roulette table.
Like, how many times has the non-bettor on a Vegas golf trip walked in? I'm not really a bettor, but all right.
Oh, yeah, here's
$10, Dan. All right.
Okay. Wait a second. 777. I'm paying for the golf course. Well, I wonder, like, the other thing I'm considering, Blake, is there's a forward out there that they maybe like more than your average bear. And they got cap space, and the guy's got a contract that's bloated, and the selling team is like, well, this guy's not as good anymore. The contract's totally overvalues him. And the Canucks go, hey, we'll give you a 6th-round pick for him or something like that. And they just plug in a forward who's, and say, okay, well, we've tried to add some goal scoring, a little more punch to our lineup. And it didn't cost us anything. And, Bob's your uncle. Wipe your hands. That's that.
Or you say bloated contract. Or they have that $4 million guy who's doing nothing, who's got 1 or 2 years left on the deal, and they say, we'll take that guy for your 1st or 2nd round pick.
Yeah, weaponizing the cap space. Yeah. That is something else that is, I think, going to get a little bit more pronounced, particularly if the Canucks lose again on Wednesday to the Ducks, that people are going to look and go, okay, Vancouver, you had all this cap space. Remember the simpler times when if they just got a second pair right shot defenseman, bumped Myers down, appropriately slotted him, let's go, right?
Alas, but no space.
They accrued all this cap space this year with all of these paper transactions to Abbotsford, with the eye of we want to have every last dollar available to us at the trade deadline. We didn't have cap space last year. We weren't able to land Gensel. We're not going to let that happen this year. Suddenly you're sitting there on all this cap space with a team that may not be worth adding to. Hey, if that's the case, weaponize that cap space.
If this trade
take on a bad contract or two, be a broker, get some draft capital for effectively using up space that isn't going to matter beyond this year.
If Dreger sources are right, and there's 2 or 3 names that the Canucks are looking at, the off-trade bait boards, names that no one's heard, but those avenues dry up by Thursday, then I think the Canucks start to say, well, if we can't use the space for positivity, we might as well use it in the negative sense.
Yeah,
you know?
A UFA to be on a bad contract where you are given a draft pick to take him.
Yep. Particularly for the UFA to be.
For a nothing contract. Yeah. No. I mean, don't for a second think I'm advocating taking on money for next year. I'm absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
That would be a little bit more risky.
No. If you do, and look, I said my piece on this earlier, but if you are someone who subscribes to just get in, anything can happen, I came across this interesting tweet on the weekend. Nikhil Velji. Canucks are, and I've updated it for him, the Canucks are 26, 16, and 10 with Demko and Lankin in the net. With the 2 goaltenders that they expect to play when everyone's healthy, they're well at 100 points plus pace. They're 1-6-1 with Artie in net. And again,
not all on Artie.
No, not all on Artie. Demko skating, but no timeline. And defensive structure, I mean, terrible against Anaheim and Seattle. So they're leaking oil there as well. I'm just putting that out there for those of you who are still daring to dream here. Sunday's practice that went down without Quinn Hughes. Pettersson between Boeser and Joshua. I've said it many times in the past. I hate Pettersson and Boeser together unless it's an offensive zone start because there's just not a lot of pace on the ice with those 2 guys. Hedl between Garland and O'Connor. Hughes Suter between Nils Höglander and Jake DeBrusk. Teddy Bluger between Kiefer Sherwood, Nils Oman, Arshdeep Bain skating as the extra forward. DPD took Hughes' spot alongside Roenick, Marcus Pettersson with Myers, Forbert, Soucy, Mancini as the extra. And as Adam Kirstenblad of the Hockey News reports, last player to leave the ice was Elias Pettersson. He was out there so long that the media finished up with the players, and he was still on the ice.
Well, ding, ding. There's why.
You think it was pure media avoidance?
It's hard not to think that.
Yeah, it's true, huh? With how aggrieved he feels by once a month getting asked questions about how shitty he's been.
I can get the kudos for appearing to stay out and work harder.
Oh, my God.
And I get to avoid the media at the same time.
I sure hope it wasn't that image-based. I sure hope it was. You know what? There's something I got to work on here. Patrick, Jim, Rick always talk about how Sydney is first one there, last one off, working on things. I'm going to go and show them I can do that too. I would love to think that was.
His own GM has been harping on him about his practice habits.
For years.
Yep. And all of a sudden, March 2nd, 2025, I'm staying late.
How about this from NHL insider Ren Lavoie out of Quebec? Apparently, the Colorado Avalanche thought they had a deal done for JT Miller, and that is one of the reasons why they traded Mikko Rantanen. And, of course, Rantanen and his contract situation with the Carolina Hurricanes, probably amongst the biggest national stories for the insiders between now and Friday. Lavoie reports that Miller refused to go to Colorado, only wanted to go back east. Or knew that the Rangers were involved. Otherwise, may have said yes to Colorado to get the, out of here.
That might have been the bowling guardrails up there to guide the trade.
I wonder if Casey Middlestad was involved in that deal. Because, I can't think it was Rantanen. It would have had to have been Miller plus for Rantanen. Although, Miller's under term, like Natchez. Colorado's very much drew the line with Rantanen with regards to where they would and wouldn't go on the contract. Here's the thing. Trade deadline, as we know from the last few years, as Rutherford and Alvin have had a big hand in this, it tends to ramp up prior to the last actual day. Our friends at TSN and elsewhere have done a lot of ragging the puck over the years on trade deadline day. And that was the case this weekend with the big Florida-Chicago trade. Seth Jones from the Blackhawks to the Panthers for Spencer Knight and a first-round pick in either 26 or 27. There's some retention there from the Blackhawks as well. So the way they look at it, they get their goaltender of the future, right? Spencer Knight, a one-time first-round pick, top goaltending prospect before he entered the NHLPA program, but he's back, and they get a first-round pick out of it. Gustav Nyquist traded again to the Minnesota Wild for a second-round pick, and then the Avalanche did make a deal with the Rangers, Lindgren and Jimmy Vesey to Colorado. This is Ryan. For Yusel Parsonen, Calvin DeHaan, and a couple of draft picks. Does Minnesota acquiring Gustav Nyquist take them out of the Brock Boeser sweepstakes? Everyone's talked about Boeser to the Wild because, of course, that's his home state. But have they made their declaration here? Are they going down the Gustav Nyquist route, and that's that?
I think they're padding their center ice position so they can trade Marco Rossi to the Vancouver Canucks. I don't think that's going to happen. I think
Minnesota still has cap space there if they want to use it. Nashville is retaining on Nyquist.
The problem, they would have to trade somebody out to get the full amount, I believe. And who on their roster don't they want for the playoffs?
I don't know.
There's nobody obvious there for me, so that's where I run into problems there.
Here's the other thing. If Gustav Nyquist, who is on 21 points, fetches a second-round pick, surely Boeser at 36 is going to fetch more than that.
Oh, yeah, I think Boeser's a first round. Again,
I think a first and a something. Yeah.
Yeah.
ESPN, their hockey crew is busy mocking trades up. Did you see this one? Elias Pettersson and Carson Soucy to Utah for Barrett Hayton, Matthias McKelly, Sean Dursey, goaltending prospect Michael Rubble, and a second-round pick. So they're having fun.
Yeah, I don't think Utah's doing that. That's a lot of assets for what are you getting back? I can't imagine that's high on the list for the Utah Hockey Club. Not that I think that Barrett Hayton is
the cat's meow.
No.
Remember he went before Quinn Hughes?
Yeah.
Everybody mentions what's his face, Zadina with Detroit. But you remember Barrett Hayton? And we started getting word of that on the draft room floor that, Arizona is going to pull a surprise here. Because Barrett Hayton was viewed as sort of like a 10 to 15 guy in that draft. Mm-hmm. And then he went 5th overall. And I can remember communicating with someone at the Canucks draft table that day saying, wow, you guys must be stunned here. That's going to open up someone like Zadina, Hughes, Boquist, or others, defensemen in particular, Hughes, Boquist, Evan Bouchard, right? He was on Noah Dobson. And the person at the Canucks draft table said, we're actually not surprised. That kid hit it out of the park with us in his interview. Knew he had some late helium. Well, he's turned into an NHL player.
Do you know what Barrett Hayton is? He's early Bo Horvat. Before Bo sort of had the...
Do you think the breakout could come there for Hayton?
I mean, but the reason why we were so amazed at Horvat's extra gear that he found is because it doesn't happen very often. Generally, you kind of see where this is going, and I would be surprised if Hayton is able to find that next level like Bo did.
Yep. Lastly here, did you catch this on the weekend as the pressure mounts on Wayne Gretzky ahead of tomorrow's Trump-imposed deadline on tariffs against Canada? Hockey Canada released a video of Gretzky talking to the Canadian team prior to the Four Nations game. He congratulated the players in the room. He told them they were making the hockey world proud. He commended them for giving up their time and told them there's nothing like playing for your country, and he wished them luck.
And he did it with the exact energy that you just read that.
It was low energy.
Like, he couldn't have seemed less involved in what he was saying.
If it was supposed to be a rah-rah moment for Coach Coop, Gretzky didn't exactly deliver the
They
energy.
delivered that video, and I was like, this is you helping? To me, this is you throwing him under a bus. Like, this is proving the point.
He wasn't very excited.
No.
Maybe he was tired.
Oh.
No?
No, I'm not buying that.
You're not? Okay. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games home and away. And we got a lot of home games this week, right? Got a couple at BC Place, got a couple at Rogers Arena. Why don't you head to Greta? Pre-game, post-game, you're just steps from the arena and stadium. Check out the great street food menu, the arcade for the intermissions or the halftimes, weekly drink specials. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta, let the games begin. Darren Dreger is going to join us. We talk Boeser. We talk Canucks deadline approach. We talk hunting centers with term. We update on Carson Soucy situation. And then J-Pat, who gets us covered off on practice yesterday, as well as pointing forward to the trade deadline. And we ask him straight up, do you think Elias Pettersson will be a Canuck beyond Friday? Jeff gives us his answer. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud sponsor of Sekeres and Price. I was on a Caps result on the weekend, and we got that. Do you remember what you were on, Blake?
That was like 7 days ago. I don't remember what I did.
Mm-hmm.
You kidding me? You ask too much of me sometimes.
All right. I'm going on the New York Derby tonight in hockey.
Okay.
Rangers just traded off a couple of pieces there, Ryan Lindgren in particular. Kind of a seller's trade. They got draft picks. I mean, they got players back, but Islanders are always little brother. Well, outside of the early 80s, Islanders are always little brother in this rivalry. They usually get a rude reception at the Garden, but the Islanders, because Lou is so weird, like Lou wants to re-sign these UFAs. Lou wants to keep this team together, even though it's just kind of playoff bar level team. I think the Islanders are going to get a win tonight against their big brother, complicating matters even further for all the other GMs and insiders who are trying to get a read on Lou and the Islanders. They pay minus 105.
8 straight wins for the Tampa Bay Lightning. 9-0-1 in their last 10 games. And I'm getting underdog money on that team tonight. Hey, tough assignment.
Team like that.
Tough assignment into Sunrise, but it's cross-state rival. You're raising your level again. Like, just in case you're getting sick of winning in a winning streak, you need something new to sort of perk you up. Cross-state rivals.
Yep.
Take the Tampa Bay Lightning plus 135
at their
against
crib.
the Panthers.
No Matthew Tkachuk, right?
Yeah, no Matthew Tkachuk.
And sometimes integrating a new player like Seth Jones can take a minute or two. I like it. Not often I say that, but I like it.
Thank you.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, use code NATION when opening that account. Darren Dreger coming up next. Carson Price from the historic Wall Center.
I know people are a little bit depressed, a little bit low on the Canucks right now. But good news is we talked about it. They got a lot of help. Playoffs still a possibility. An August or April 6th game, no August games. April 6th game between the Canucks and the Golden Knights. That might be for a lot of marbles for the Vancouver Canucks at the bottom of the bracket, the Vegas Golden Knights at the top. Don't you want to go? Your Pacific Toyota dealers want to send you there. Great contest going right now. The grand prize, 2 tickets in the Kanika Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena. Not just any old tickets either. And you get 2 Canucks jerseys if you want to win. Check out the link in our episode description or follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram. That's at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. Contest open to residents of BC and the Yukon. And hey, while you're sniffing around, you might as well head to your local Pacific Toyota dealer and take a BZ4X for a test drive, their newest entry into their electric lineup. You can get $6,500 in rebates and incentives right now there and 3.29% APR for 36 months. So shop Toyota.ca or go visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer.
We did August games once.
Yeah, we did.
2020.
Yeah.
They were really good, actually, in August. Their record in August is formidable. Minnesota, St. Louis, just ticked boxes there.
Canucks are full
Almost
of
beat
Mr.
Vegas,
August.
too. Yeah, exactly. Boeser was pretty good in August. And speaking of, let's welcome in TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey podcast. His busiest week, trade deadline.
Yeah.
Hello to you, and I understand you are hearing things on Brock Boeser. What's the latest there, Drex?
Well, I think it goes in line with what most teams are thinking of when they've got expiring contracts and they've had, negotiation discussions, but nothing that is progressed or come to fruition. And in Brock's case, it's very similar to that. And there has been a lot of reporting on this. We know that Boeser was offered what I think the team would describe as a good contract in the first half of the regular season. I think that there was some back and forth around that contract offer, but it wasn't substantial enough or didn't sway the Boeser side to sign the extension. So that brings us to where we're at now, and just days away from the trade deadline. The fact that deal, I believe, isn't on the table anymore. And then from Boeser's perspective, he's probably saying, well, that's fine because the deal that we were considering isn't on the table anymore either. So what does that leave you with if you're Patrick Allvin? And that leaves you with a tough decision. You either, now have to consider Brock Boeser as an own rental with the playoffs looming and the hope and the belief that if you do that he's going to be an impactful piece in the playoffs, or you embrace what you've got in exploring your trade possibilities. And we don't have an answer to that yet, other than we know that Allvin and Jamie Rutherford continue to be in tune and having conversations with clubs about the possibility of trade. They just haven't made a decision yet as to whether or not that's what they're going to do.
So no final offer coming, no last and best offer coming from the Canucks, as you see it?
I believe that the offer that was made is no longer valid. There's nothing on the table, but that can change, right? I mean, if all of a sudden there's a shift in direction or change of heart, it does feel like a bit of a stretch right now. So what I mean by it can change, if they decide that the value of Brock Boeser, even though his production's down a bit, is meaningful post-deadline, well, then, yeah, I suppose the opportunity to revisit any past contract negotiations and extension talks is valid, but it doesn't feel that way right now. And, again, I'm sure Allvin is busy with, the teams that are calling and also revisiting probably some of the conversations that he's had with general managers looking for a forward.
I realize agents don't like to have this point reinforced, but the sentiment does sort of just feel, Darren, like he would give a hometown discount. He will leave some money on the table versus especially an AFP assessment of 9.3 over 7 years. Like if that's par, it sounds like he's willing to give a hometown discount here to the Canucks.
I don't know that. Probably. I know he and you guys watch the Canucks games very, very closely. I mean, some players are impacted by the conversations that go around them, right, and their families. And there is a sense that, yeah, I mean, Brock Boeser is impacted. His game is influenced negatively based on all the ongoing speculation, everything that's gone into this season. And he's one of those players, because he's a team first guy, that even when he's not directly or personally involved in what's going on, it still impacts and influences you, right? And God, I mean, we know that there's been enough drama around the Vancouver Canucks this year. Like, there's been so much of it. And I think that even by being in proximity of some of that, it's impacted his play. So to go as far as to say that I think he'd take a hometown discount, I think that there was a time when he was willing to consider that. Maybe that time is now behind him. But again, you always have to qualify, man. Like, if they decide not to trade him, then all bets are off. And maybe there is opportunity, if things go well, for Boeser and for the Vancouver Canucks to rekindle this romance.
The optics of trading him or even letting him walk, though, Dregs, also doesn't look good for the Vancouver Canucks right now. This is a team that is bereft in offense right now, while there's sound reasoning to be concerned about the back half of any long-term contract with Boeser, really good reasoning to be wary of that. There's no guarantee on the free agent market or the trade market that you replace the goals of Brock Boeser.
And that's the challenge, right? And that's why it's so difficult to make trades that matter, hockey trades. Like we always say, he wants to make a hockey trade. Well, everybody wants to make a hockey trade. And it sounds nonsensical to frame it that way. But how many times do you see, especially around the trade deadline, where players like that are dealt, and players and general managers will pay a premium for a rental piece like Brock Boeser? Well, Vancouver's not interested in the rental market. They're really not. And Vancouver needs players to come back and be impactful players. No different than the Buffalo Sabres. And it feels like we almost want to go all the way back to Buffalo in their connection with Vancouver. And the reason that, those trades didn't happen back in October is because Buffalo needed players that, are going to come back, that are going to be difference makers for the Sabres. Well, that's where Vancouver's in a different stratosphere than the Buffalo Sabres. But because of the offense that can be generated by Brock Boeser when he's clicking the way that he does, it can't be futures and it can't be draft picks. It's got to be better than that.
We just showed your tweet about Buffalo, so just big moves, huh? That's all Kevin Adams wants to make is big moves, not in the selling business, or at least the rental selling business. He wants to do something significant here.
Well, I know he's been offered, and I think I tweeted this, that was included in the tweet, something like, numerous offers and strong offers. Well, by strong offers, you're talking about first-round draft picks that have been thrown at Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres for, of course, Dylan Cousins, Bo Byram, maybe throw Alex Tuck into that mix. I know some are speculating on Peterka and what direction the club might want to go with him, being that there's a contract scenario that needs to play out. And Adams just continues to affirm, look, we need players. We don't need draft picks. We don't need prospects. We're good on both fronts. We need players who are going to step into this lineup and make us better now and make us really good moving forward. And that's a challenge, especially when you're willing to part with the players that we're talking about in Buffalo here again. I mean, these are 3 high-quality players. Why would you be willing to trade those to either a contending team or any team, for that matter, unless they're willing to give you quality assets back? And so far that has materialized.
Okay, if the Canucks are not in the rental business, that means they're looking for players with term. Safe to assume center iceman, Dregs, after the Miller trade?
Yeah, probably, and that's a challenge. Well, not probably. They're most definitely looking for a centerman, absolutely. What level of centerman are we talking about now, right? And everybody's swirling around Scotty Lawton now of the Philadelphia Flyers because, conventional wisdom tells us with the St. Louis Blues just a point back of the Western Conference playoff cut line, does it make sense that Doug Armstrong is going to trade his captain, Braden Shen? Probably not, unless somebody blows his doors off. And I know the ask for Braden Shen from some clubs was enormous, as it should be. I mean, again, all the assets that Braden Shen is going to deliver. But I'm reminded, too, that St. Louis is a smallish market. So that playoff revenue makes a big difference to ownership of the St. Louis Blues. So I don't think you're going to see Armstrong selling. So that shifts the market a little bit to center ice. So now Danny Briere can probably get a first-round pick or something equivalent plus for Scott Laughton. But what I'm mindful of is the conversations that I'm sure Patrick Allvin has had with general managers around the league, that didn't start in the last week or two. Maybe they started in the offseason. And players that we're not speculating on, centers that maybe are available in the right scenario. And I'm not going to mention any team or mention any names because I just don't know that. I've heard some stuff that, Vancouver most definitely is targeting centers that we haven't speculated on. They're not on trade bait lists. So we'll see if that pans out. But most definitely they're looking for a centerman.
But that's a Pettersson exchange then, you would think, to extract somebody? No,
I don't think so. No. Well, and again, if there's a way to unload Elias Pettersson, sure, you do it. Absolutely. But it probably seems more likely that whatever return you're going to get for Petey is going to be better in the offseason. And then that's the belief of those close to Pettersson as well, is that they don't think he's going to be traded between now and Friday. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. No, I mean, I think you're looking at other pieces. Could Carson Soucy be involved? He's got the no-move clause. It's got to be that plus. Depending on the player in question here. But it would make sense if it's a team that is real close in the East to the playoff line, that maybe doesn't have depth at center, but may have something that's close and would like to add, some other pieces, maybe a depth forward. Maybe it's Carson Soucy, again, who's going to manage this process if he's traded because of the no move, that sort of scenario.
Well, I mean, that's the narrow path to success here for the Vancouver Canucks. Is if they don't have to give up Pettersson in order to bring back a decent center here, guys.
Right.
Does that give you the leash to give Pettersson one more kick at the can in the fall? Does that give you the peace of mind that you do have another skilled center that you can lean on for some of the offense? Again, we don't know who this guy is.
No.
I don't know who we're talking about here, but in concept, that's the one way to do that.
I don't know how Darren feels about it, but Scott Laughton does not change the price.
No,
for me,
it wouldn't. It would have to be bigger than Scott Laughton. No, but as you said, somebody off the trade bait.
And of course, we got 20 some games here left and potentially playoffs. So I think they have time. I think it's probably wise to use it, unless, as Darren says, somebody blows their socks off by Friday and they feel like, okay, we have to make this move. You mentioned Soucy, Dregs. Where do things stand with Carson Soucy?
Yeah, status quo. I mean, he's, again, I reference the trade bait graphics because everybody has them, and his name is on every single one, right? I think that there was some dialogue with Carson and his camp probably 10 days, 2 weeks ago. And the belief was that, they were expecting that there'd be a trade scenario that would unfold. Now, it's Monday as we're having this conversation. Plenty of time between now and 3 o'clock Eastern on Friday. But what gums it up a little bit is that no-move clause, of course, and the fact that he's got a young family. And I think it's been relatively quiet from the initial gesture of maybe having that conversation a couple of weeks ago to where we're at right now. And that's what makes it really challenging, I think, for some players. And I would be that player. If I had a no-move clause and maybe I wasn't a perfect fit anymore with the club, I mean, I might get a bit ornery, to be fair, especially days leading up to the trade deadline, unless it's a scenario whereby, okay, you're going to a team that maybe you're a better fit on, and maybe you feel like your opportunity is better to contend for a Stanley Cup than what you're seeing in Vancouver. So there's lots of reasons competitively for the player to consider it, but now just days, a few days outside of the trade deadline, and that being relatively quiet between Soucy and Canucks management, not so sure how it'll play out.
But players like Soucy are built for the deadline. Like that is your prototypical deadline acquisition.
Absolutely. And I'm not surprised. A lot of players and agents view it as contract renegotiation and going back on your word. And by the letter of the law, they're not wrong on that. So your understanding, Dregs, if the Canucks find a trade fit, they are going to bring it to Soucy and see what he says. They don't have a list of teams he would accept a trade to.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And I do, like, and I'm not throwing either side under the bus. I just think that everything that's gone on around the Vancouver Canucks, it's just, they went through their process a couple of weeks ago, and now all of a sudden it's quiet. And that might look, the defense market is pretty thin here, guys. Let's be honest, especially for depth defensemen. There's not a lot available. That can and probably will change because, again, multiple calls this morning. And several managers just telling me, look, we don't even know what the market is. It hasn't been fully defined just yet, which sounds bonkers with the trade deadline around the corner. But again, just look at both conferences and the playoff matchups that are still very much in play here. So I can appreciate that, but it's going to have to change. And when you've got a no-move clause, it gets more complicated.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the defensemen who have moved. Seth Jones, Marcus Pettersson, Will Borgen, Cody Ceci. So, we have seen a ton of movement already on the defense market prior to the deadline.
Yeah, not a big – are you seeing the Ceci price range in terms of what Soucy brings back, do you think?
I would think so. And by the way, that was a sneaky good ad by the Dallas Stars. And not just Cody Ceci, but to get that package deal with Mikael Granlund as well. I mean, Jimmy Nill deserves a ton of credit there. And there's lots of speculation as to whether or not Dallas is done here yet, right? They've got the cap space with Tyler Seguin and Mira Heiskanen. But yeah, I would think that would be fair in comparing Cody Ceci and Carson Soucy. But I'm not the general manager that's going to put it all together, so it doesn't matter what I think when it comes to the value of the player. The value will be determined between now and 3 o'clock Eastern when all of a sudden, and that's what happens too, right? You're willing to offer a draft pick 4 days prior to the deadline, whatever, a lower-end draft pick, because you think that that's what that defenseman warrants. And then all of a sudden you strike out 2-3 times, and you're like, hey, Winnipeg, use Winnipeg as an example. Winnipeg can be a tough sell, even though they're, arguably the best team in the National Hockey League right now. Well, Cheveldayoff runs into this every single year, where it's a no-move clause, it's a no-trade clause. For whatever reason, despite the fact that they've been perennial contenders, guys just won't waive to go to Winnipeg. So you go, you've got your whiteboard and you've got 5 names on it, and all of a sudden you get to wherever the player is on that list. You're like, all right, well, I better give up the draft pick or I'm going to be empty-handed. That happens every single year across the league.
Just lastly, Dregs, there was a little bit of rumblings last week on Derek Forbort here. Forbort, Hughes Suter, their other UFAs. Are you hearing anything with regards to extension talks there, or do you think they could be on the move?
Well, potentially, sure. I think there's low-level conversations, but that would be part of just doing your management duties, right? Knowing what the parameters are of a deal that the player is looking for, term, money, and all of that, and then you take that back into whatever situation room that you've been developing at home or on the road. And if the trade interest outweighs what you think the potential of the player is on a shorter term extension, then that's the decision you make. But I don't think there's anything front burner.
But just to underline this, that you've heard the same. The Vancouver Canucks want to make the playoffs more than get assets this week.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the sense I'm getting. But they're going to have to be creative because I said earlier in the program here, they don't want to be aggressive in the rental market. But, again, if there aren't fair hockey trades that are upgrading certain positions, let's just play the what-if game here for a moment. What if, the situation we talked about where they're having conversations about a center iceman that isn't on a trade bait board, but that doesn't come to fruition. And Scotty Lawton goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, or he goes to Winnipeg, or he goes somewhere else. Oh, Brock Nelson isn't available because Lou Lamoriello decides that he's keeping him as his own rental. All of a sudden now, if you're Vancouver, you have a defined need a defined need at center ice. So all of a sudden you start to look a little bit more creatively at certain options.
Well, it should be a fascinating week here for the Canucks and for the league at large, particularly since we haven't got into it, but Rantanen? Darren, what do you think? Chances of Mikko Rantanen moving for a second time here this trade season?
I think they're slim to none. Slim to none, Matt. And, good source with the Carolina Hurricanes yesterday shared with me that, look, again, it's age old. We should almost put this qualifier banner across all networks. Unless someone blows our doors off, we're not trading this player. And that's position the Carolina Hurricanes. They're willing to gamble, and it's a considerable gamble. Most people think Rantanen's going to go to free agency, but Carolina believes that they're a contending team, and the extra time available to them after Friday, might give them enough of a runway to convince Mikko Rantanen and his significant other that Carolina is a nice place to build a family.
Well, we'll see if there are any Godfather offers between now and Friday, and we look forward to watching Jimmy and the crew tap dance.
Yeah.
As we wait things out.
Yes. Good luck on Friday, sir.
On Friday, good luck. I hope you're not involved with anything involving a primate or reindeer games.
Thanks, Drake.
Thanks, guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, a proudly Canadian-owned, operated company dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations here in BC, Victoria, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Coquitlam Center, Willowbrook, and Langley. They're committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They've got mine diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. Here's Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, host of Rink-Wide Vancouver. We're in Saturday after a loss to the Seattle Kraken, Jeff, but practice Sunday is where I want to begin because the captain was absent. Your information here and thoughts about Quinn Hughes, what he's fighting through, and his availability going forward.
Yeah, we're led to believe that this is a new injury, not related to the oblique that kept him out for the 6 games in the Four Nations. So that is not good news on the Quinn Hughes front. Officially day-to-day, but boy, we've heard that a lot from the Vancouver Canucks, and take that for what it's worth. Monday, a day off, back on the practice ice on Tuesday, and we'll see if there's any developments there. I wasn't surprised given the fact that Quinn didn't play the final 10 minutes in Seattle on Saturday. 3 games in 4 nights for him. The extra time it took him to peel himself off the ice after I think it was the 2-2 goal. You could see he was in some distress there. I think we're getting to a point here, and obviously it's such a crucial week with the trade deadline. But if the Canucks indicate in any way that they are sellers, you do wonder if the best course of action wouldn't be to put the captain on ice for a while here. This isn't about what he can do down the stretch for them. This is big picture about keeping their best player completely healthy and making sure that these injuries don't mount, that bad situation doesn't get worse. So, I wasn't surprised when I showed up at the rink and Quinn Hughes wasn't on the ice. The guy I was hoping to see was Thatcher Demko, because it's been 3 weeks plus now since he left the game against Toronto. We were told he'd be reevaluated after the road trip. Rick Tocchet did reveal that he's been skating on his own, but in terms of his readiness to join the group for practice and beyond that game action, all of that still remains up in the air for Thatcher Demko and the Vancouver Canucks.
Do their deadline plans have to change if Quinn Hughes is going to miss some time?
I think the answer should be no, that Quinn Hughes' situation shouldn't impact them at all, but it very well may. They're given all indications that they should be sellers. I just don't see any way around this right now that, they go 1-4 on this road trip. Calgary scores 1 goal in 3 games on a road trip and gets a point necessary in Carolina to move back in front of the Vancouver Canucks. The Flames, with 1 goal in 3 games, somehow have moved back in front of the Vancouver Canucks, and that just kind of tells you the way that the Canucks are spinning their wheels here. Again, I keep thinking that I don't know what the end game is sneaking into the playoffs as the second wild card and running straight into Winnipeg or Vegas. This team cannot score goals. That's happened. It's been that way for a while now. I guess for me, the bigger concern is all of a sudden cracks forming in this defensive posture and structure that they thought that they could choke the life out of opponents, and were doing that just before the Four Nations break. The hope was that Quinn would get back and, hey, everything was going to be great. To give up 5 to Anaheim and then 6 to Seattle. I mean, there aren't that many teams below the Vancouver Canucks in the Western Conference standings, and those are 2 of them, and they ended up pumping the Canucks for way too many goals. So all of that combined, Matt, I think leads me back to this idea that Quinn Hughes, no Quinn Hughes, the direction of this team still remains very much a mystery to me. It just feels like if you have sellable assets here, it's go time this week. That the idea of spending assets to support this group in its current form just doesn't make any sense.
The schedule is so unkind, too, going forward, that bringing back a Quinn Hughes at 75% because he can theoretically play. So, yeah, he'll get – I mean, he's not going to get any healthier playing more than every other night over the course of the rest of the month.
Right, and it was so clear that even though he was back in the lineup, he was nowhere close to 100%. No. He was on the ice for 4 of the 5 goals that Anaheim scored. He was on for 3 of the goals that Seattle scored before they sat him down there at the end of the bench. That's not Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes defends by spending his entire night in the offensive end, spinning circles and skating around guys. To see him and Philip Hronek, and boy, Hronek, who has been really good for the Canucks. I think his best stretch of hockey over the last month. He had a rough one on Saturday, and I don't know if it was workload catching up to him, if he was trying to compensate because he knew that the captain wasn't in full health and at top form, but I thought Philip Hronek really struggled. And so if that's your top pair and they're getting worked the way they did by the Kraken, there's a trickle-down effect, obviously, and then you're down in the game, and you'd like to lean on Quinn Hughes in those situations, but I think the Canucks showed some judgment, and I was glad to see that, rather than running Quinn Hughes out for 10 or 12 minutes of the third period, as they've done in the past when they're down in hockey games. They recognize that there's just nothing in the tank right now for Quinn Hughes, and there was a risk of furthering this new injury situation. So they took their lumps in the third period. They come home with their tails between their legs, 1 win in 4 games. Guys, they didn't score a third period goal on the road trip. Like, there's a lot about this hockey club. They had a second period lead in all 5 of the games, didn't score a third period goal. And as a result, they got the overtime win after they had flushed the 2-0 lead in Los Angeles. That's all they have to show for these 5 games out of the break. So, yeah, I mean, the offense remains an issue. The top end. Rick Tocchet, we were talking about practice. Rick Tocchet on Sunday spoke at length and didn't name names, but it was so clear. You could have just injected Elias Pettersson into just about every answer he gave about needing more from the top end guys, needing guys to shoot the puck, needing guys to, you name it, essentially. Talked about losing faceoffs. So certainly one of the goals, the Matty Beniers goal in Seattle, was a direct loss of Pettersson, and then let Beniers just sneak past him and tip that puck in. So again, it comes back to this idea that the coach is clearly frustrated, but I think he's sort of gritting his teeth and not trying to pour gasoline on this fire right now. But you can just sense the frustration post-game on Saturday, and then again back at Rogers Arena on Sunday.
I think both things are true here. Elias Pettersson is a big reason why the Canucks are where they are. I don't think there's much debate in that. And yet, I think there's still some culpability Rick Tocchet's way. It is part of the coach's job to get the best out of each player, and merely him being frustrated is not going to be enough. And then, as you talked about, the defensive structure has left them all of a sudden as well. This is a guy that does not have a contract extension here. How much longer till that's the headline, across, the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, quite frankly, I'm surprised that it hasn't been a front burner issue, but I think with all the drama that they've had, and now the trade deadline and some of these individual struggles and the Quinn Hughes news, it just feels like every day there's a story or two that have sort of leaped past it on the depth chart of Vancouver Canucks drama. But you're right, through all of this, and that's why I maintain, if this coach doesn't make the playoffs, if the team doesn't make the playoffs, I think all bets are off. And Farhan said on Rink Wide on Saturday, like, he doesn't see a way that Rick Tocchet and Elias Pettersson both come back next year. And I tend to agree with that something's got to give. You've jacked the ticket prices already. That much we know. How do you sell all of this to this fan base that's already pretty damn frustrated? I do think that there's going to have to be some change, and whether that's personnel, whether it's the coach, we'll see. And you're right. Like, Rick Tocchet shouldn't escape all of this. You know, he talked post-game in Seattle and again Sunday about moments. And I don't disagree that, you know, you can look at key moments in just about every hockey game. But he seemed to suggest that all the moments were going, you know, the way of the opponent. Well, look at the overtime in Los Angeles on Wednesday. They kill off a penalty. That was a moment, and it'll allow them to stay in the hockey game and ultimately win it in overtime. They had a power play at 2-2 in Anaheim when the Ducks had all the momentum in the second period. Score there, and maybe that's a moment. Instead, they didn't, and the Ducks ended up going in front and running away from the Canucks. The other night in Seattle, guys, Dakota Joshua scores a shorthanded beauty to break a 2-all tie. That should have been a moment for the Vancouver Canucks, but how many shows have we done together here where we've talked about this team getting players back from injury or, you know, should have got a boost, either big picture or in a game itself, and they just throw up all over themselves. Like, they can't help themselves. They cannot deal, it feels like, with any sort of success that they have. But that should have been a bigger moment in that hockey game. Dakota Joshua, who I think is showing some strides here. I think he's had it wasn't a great road trip for the team, but I do think individually we saw some signs of life and some signs of last year's Dakota Joshua, so that part's promising. But that goal in a 2-all game, a shorthanded goal, penalty kill's been good for the Canucks. That was sort of a cherry on top, and instead they just flushed that and, you know, go meekly into the night down in the Emerald City. So it's not all moments for the other team. There are moments there for the Vancouver Canucks. They just don't do much with them.
Ask you the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Sorry, Blake. I thought you had something lined up there. The rare time where neither of us have something to say. We're asking in our poll question, who do you want traded by Friday's deadline? Brock Boeser, Elias Pettersson, both neither. I know you're not a want guy, Jeff, but talk to me. Elias Pettersson on Friday. Do you think he's a Canuck past the deadline?
I do. I don't see a contending team thinking that that's a deal that they want to make right now. And let's be clear, 1 assist in 5 games on the road trip, like, that's where he is, but it goes way beyond that with the shots and the lack of shot attempts and the hesitation and that first period power play. I just don't see a good team thinking, yeah, that's the piece we need. We're going to go all in and make that trade. It's a complicated trade, obviously, with the contract. And a team that is looking to shake things up, I think they can wait until the offseason here. So I just don't think that there's going to be a lineup of teams knocking on the Canucks' door to get their hands on Elias Pettersson. So I think he gets through the deadline here. But Matt, I saw your response on X about Brock Boeser, and I tend to agree. Like, if you could tell me that the person could stay past the deadline and get back to his goal-scoring ways and be a productive contributor for the Vancouver Canucks, 6 years, I think I'd probably be willing to do that on an extension. Beyond that, I get the hesitation on the part of the hockey club. But Brock had 1 assist in 5 games on the road trip and was remarkably quiet. And then to see Rick Tocchet put both Pettersson and Boeser together and sort of lump your problems, I'm not sure that was the best way out for either one of them. So, yeah, I just think, again, the direction that this club is headed right now, if you have a tradable asset and you look at the market and what's out there and available, and Brock's a proven playoff commodity now, yes, it feels like the weight of the situation is certainly hovering over him. I think it is contributing to his lack of production and just his overall lack of performance here. But if there's a first-round pick, a first-round and a prospect on the table for this player, I think the Vancouver Canucks have no choice but to jump at that.
Wednesday's game against Anaheim looms pretty large if there's no Boeser resolution. I imagine he will get some sort of acknowledgement from the crowd, and I'm sitting here wondering if he's going to get emotional on Wednesday. If the crowd picks a farewell Brock moment or rises up for Brock Boeser.
Not that this matters, but there haven't been a whole lot of rumors about him yet.
No, I know.
So it doesn't seem like he's front burner, but still, you never know.
I hear you, Matt. My hunch is that you won't get that sort of groundswell Usually it's reserved for a player coming back after the fact, first visit back to Vancouver. I get it's a savvy hockey market. People understand the situation. I don't foresee that. And again, you get through Wednesday, you've got all of Thursday, you got Friday morning. Things can happen in a hurry here. And I know there were reports last week that the Canucks had gone 5 years and $8 million, and that wasn't enough for Boeser. And I totally understand that. That would be leaving a ton of dough on the table. Mm-hmm. But I guess there's a part of me that thinks there's probably one last and final coming from the Vancouver Canucks, and it may tack on one more year. And at that point, how much does he love Vancouver? How much does he love the only NHL city that he's known? How much does he believe in this management group and ownership and all those types of things? The player certainly gets a say in this. And so we'll see where it goes. So I think we'll save the grand farewell until, it's official. And it's wild right now, guys. I mean, you see it, I see it on social. Like, even the insiders don't really have a true sense of how this thing's going to play out by week's end.
Well, what Dreger told us, they're not going to be aggressive on the rental market, which, yes, makes sense. But, yeah, they've got so many moving parts here. Pettersson,
well, the
Boeser,
UFAs,
Carson Soucy.
The UFAs are really curious for me here because, like, the Philadelphia Flyers are talking about trading away Scott Laughton. Philadelphia Flyers are 4 points back of the playoffs. Yeah, there's 300 teams that have a small chance of making the playoffs in the East, but they are one of them.
But that's a designed full team rebuild that Briere brought out last year. But and they've already traded.
But the Canucks have to ask themselves tough
Farabee.
Questions there too, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't think the Canucks are in that same position.
Not by Friday.
But guys like Hughes Suter, he's officially broken through the cellophane ceiling of 14 and 15 goals over the last 4 seasons. He's at the gaudy number of 16. He could score 30 now by the end of the season, now that he's broken through. But he's on a career year. All of a sudden, you've got a guy that's a UFA that's having a career year. You could usually trade that guy, but it doesn't sound like they have the appetite to do so, Jeff.
No, we touched on him on Friday. He scored in back-to-back games all of a sudden, and you're right, up to 16. So 20 certainly seems like it would be within his reach if he stuck here, even on a low-scoring Canucks team. You'd like to think he could get 4 more before the end of this season. It's funny, like, he's such a low-maintenance guy, low-key. It doesn't feel like the kind of player that other teams maybe are seeking, certainly other fan bases are clamoring for. And yet he's such a useful performer that I think he could help any team. So, behind the scenes, maybe the Canucks are taking some calls there. But I said to you on Friday, if you trade him, I just don't think Aatu Räty's ready to step in and give you all the things that Pius Suter does. 16 goals, sure, but it's the penalty killing as well. And he's part of the first unit over the boards to kill penalties every night for the Canucks. And penalty kill's been really good, and he's been a huge part of that. So if you trade him, then you're just out there searching for the next one when maybe you've got now, we haven't heard a whole lot about the Canucks having discussions with him on an extension either. And so without knowing the price point there, that clouds this whole discussion. But something tells me that Pius Suter is going to make it through the trade deadline here. Even if people think, there should be a fire sale, I think he survives and is a Canuck beyond Friday.
Jeff, I know you're the do something guy. Are you prepared if the Canucks do nothing by Friday?
I'm not the do nothing guy. I'm not the do nothing guy. Trust me.
Could this be a do nothing?
I have trouble processing that. You've thrown a curve at me.
But honestly, guys, like, they're sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They don't want to bring in rentals. They don't really want to move Brock because it hurts their chances. Soucy may say no on the no move. Pettersson could be a summer thing. Suter and Forbert just run them through. Maybe there's a mini extension there. Is there a real possibility of do nothing here for the full week?
Sure, I think there is. And we have seen this organization, like, go back a decade with Radim Vrbata and Dan Hamhuis. I mean, that still stings. Now, the Twins were in a different boat, and they had earned the right to chart their course in the end of their career. But really, the only time that the Canucks have been sellers was Alex Burrows and Jannik Hansen, and that didn't work out in the big picture. I mean, they got pieces that, kind of petered out and fizzled. So we've seen this. We've seen this from this organization. A couple of management groups. What's the through line there? I suppose it's same ownership group, right? And this idea of stripping it right down. So, there's a part of me, as much as I don't like the idea, because I do think this road trip and this weekend particularly showed that I just don't see the forward momentum. I get people will give you the just get in and things can happen and upsets. That's what we love sports. I just don't see this group as currently constructed as low scoring as it is. The lowest scoring team, they're tied with San Jose, lowest scoring third period team in hockey. They've got the third worst third period differential. They're the only team in the NHL that hasn't come back when trailing after two periods. Like, you're down in playoff games. It happens. You're facing good opponents. Of course you're going to be down in games. Like, I just don't see the ingredients in this mix that would make these playoffs compelling. So, as much as I love playoff hockey, I'm not feeling it with this group. And therefore, again, right now it just feels like all roads lead back to being sellers.
They have 3 trophy-eligible players, like 3, that you would guess. 2 of them are injured, and one of them is not physically absent, but mentally. It's not looking good.
It has been a hell of a year.
Yeah.
Jeff, good stuff. We'll be tuning in to Rink Wide Wednesday after the Ducks, and you'll be joining us Friday after we know the score here on trade deadline. So looking forward to that, my friend.
Yeah, and I think an interesting week of practice, obviously, with the Quinn Hughes situation. So back to work for the Vancouver Canucks on Tuesday. We'll be there, and we'll certainly be monitoring that situation and see if we get a Thatcher Demko sighting as well at some point over this week.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall and enjoy an exclusive Secure some price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention us. Some blackout date supply based on availability. Might be the ideal Friday to do that with the game. And this segment, a presentation of Resurrection Spirits, who have partnered up and created the Canucks Price Gin. We have a gin. It's made in East Van using BC ingredients. It is a gin with character, designed for those who appreciate the art of true craftsmanship in every pour. And when you go to resurrectionspirits.ca, use code S&P, S in the end symbol, P, for $5 off. Get it while you can. Limited run here. And once these bottles are gone, they gone.
Everybody's buying local. Got to buy local here. And spring's just around the corner, as we have seen here, showing signs of warmth. S&P G&T season is coming.
Love it. All right. Whitecaps. Fantastic. A sensational 2-1 victory over the reigning and defending LA Galaxy, MLS champion LA Galaxy, at BC Place before 21,000 people. This is only the second time in their MLS history where they have started 2-0 in league play, scoring multiple goals in both wins. They did that in 2018. They're 3-1 across all competitions here early in this season. Brian White, once again the hero, once again with the head, a late header off a Pedro Vite feed.
2 Vite assists.
Yeah, gets them past the Galaxy. U.S. anthem was booed at BC Place. Brian White from New Jersey, quote, "I would like to say thank you to the fans that cheered and clapped the anthem at the end and showed respect for the flag. Obviously, there's issues. It's not my business." And I'll leave it at that. The other thing is the Caps have had so many chances in these games. I saw your tweet. First half, thought on the Whitecaps, need better execution in the final third. Got there easily. And often only to leave without a chance. And Takaoka, so unpredictable. You had an issue.
Didn't love that goal.
No.
He just kind of jumped into the fray thinking that he was going to help out, but he ended up just putting it on a tee for LA instead, and the wrong guy too. So, I don't love his franticness sometimes in big moments, but for the most part, the Whitecaps own the ball, which that's the biggest change I think that people will pick up on Sorensen versus Vanny is that, the Whitecaps are owning the ball here in the early going.
Watch the second half at the Pemby with all our friends. Shout out Chuck and Justin and others. And that was coming up time and again. Look at them on the ball. Boy, this is a aggressive style. It's entertaining football right now for the Whitecaps. The bad news here is Sam Adekugbe, after opening the scoring in the third minute, gets injured and has to leave the game.
Ocampo was pretty good after he came on in relief. That's the good news. And eventually, Emmanuel Sabi will come in and he can play wide. They think he can play interior as well, but he's an option for them if this is a longer-term thing with Adekugbe. I hope it's not. I hope it's just a pull and he's back in a couple of weeks' time, but I would guess and I'm just guessing, I would guess it's at least that.
You were telling me some word that it could be a turf injury.
Well, Sorensen said he's running. He got clipped from behind, so he goes to brace himself, jams his cleats into the turf, and it didn't release, and so it held on too long. Yeah,
and more bad news for the Canadian men's national team because Alphonso Davies and Richie Laryea injured on the weekend as well.
Yeah.
Could be without three guys for their Nations League semifinal against Mexico on March 20th at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Before that, of course, you have the second leg of CONCACAF Champions Cup. That's coming up Wednesday against CF Monterrey of the Mexican League, and Saturday, CF Montreal for a all-Canadian derby. Another big week at BC Place for Vancouver
Montreal's
Whitecaps
0-2. Montreal's 0-2.
Yes.
They have to play the game. They have to go out and actually win the contest. But it is available to them here, clearly, to go 3-0 to start the season.
They're one of three MLS sides who have started 2-0 in the West, and they're tied for second in goals in the entire loop as well. Some NFL news. Matthew Stafford going back, going to stay with the Los Angeles Rams after a dalliance with player and club, going out and seeing what the trade value is. San Francisco 49ers getting weaker. Trade wide receiver Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Philadelphia is releasing star cornerback Darius Slay. Easier to do that after you win a Super Bowl and you have the two great rookie corners who played so well. And Jimmy Johnson retiring from his analyst gig with the NFL on Fox after 30 years. Godspeed to one of my favorite speakers on the game of football over his long and illustrious career, one of three coaches to win both a Super Bowl and a college football
and what was your
championship.
What was your favorite combine moment? I think we saw a 343-pound lineman run a sub 540.
Yeah, well, I mean, looks pretty impressive with how much size going that quick.
Well, and he was yelling the whole time too. He was screaming his way through the 40. Oh man!
Well, the one thing is the Texas receiver saying, "I'm going to break the record," and then coming up way shy and getting booed. Son, you don't go into this thing saying you're going to break the record when you're that far off. And lastly, our friend Dr. Rami from the North Shore says, guys, could you give a shout out to the grade 9 girls Windsor Wolves basketball team who completed a perfect 29-0 season by winning the provincial championship on Saturday? It was an honor to coach this wonderful group of champions.
29-0.
Well done, girls.
My goodness.
Coach, not so bad either. Thank you, Dr.
Years from now, you'll be like the Dolphins, cheering against somebody who's coming close to 29-0.
You'll always have that undefeated bond.
Yes.
And that championship together. Results of the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question from Friday. How should the Canucks approach the deadline? Buyers, sellers, hockey trades. What won the poll?
Sellers.
Correct. Percentage?
50.
72.
Whoa!
Mick Canuck, it's over. This core has had its years of trying, but it's done. Tear it down. Everyone but Hughes you can pick. Robbie, $10 million in cap space sitting there. No wonder they are terrible. This is underreported. They have tons of cap space. And in a world where we thought they were going to try and add even further from Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor, yeah, great. But if you're not a buyer, Blake, I've got another friend. Shout out Mike and Ladysmith. Do you weaponize cap space? Take on bad contracts?
It's the least you could do. It's the least you could do, right?
More draft capital? Good shout, Robbie. Manta says the best defenseman on the planet is on a cheap contract, and we're talking about selling? ? Let's all prepare for 43's departure then. I just don't think he's going to re-sign if the Canucks start to become sellers. Canucks need to somehow find a 1C or they are doomed. Well, yeah, easier said than done. Paulie, good honesty here. I'm hovering somewhere between sellers and hockey trades. As sad as it is to say, I think it's time to punt on the season. The consistent inconsistency is going to carry over in the playoffs, which does not bode well. And Josh, the Zamboni guy, I would do a bit of both. Try to get young guys back so you can sell retooling to the players and not punting on the season. If they re-sign Brock, then you try and buy a winger to supplement scoring. Would you be okay with that?
Like a rental, though?
Well, he doesn't specify.
I don't think if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you bring in unless the price ends up being like a third rounder. If you can get like a decent winger for a third rounder,
I was gonna
sure.
say, if you're going to be buyers for me, like 4th, 5th, 6th rounders,
yeah.
But top 100 picks, I think I want to keep. I know there's not a huge difference between a third and a fourth, but lastly, errors and omissions. I'm going to self-report. Bet365 segment on Friday, I said, bet on a Caps win or bet on a Caps tie. It's just a tie. Caps get half of it, Galaxy gets half of it, but didn't happen.
You said
I said bet on a Caps tie, but
well, in the Caps match, I suppose.
Tie for both teams.
Yeah.
Anything to self-report?
Nothing in the inbox or otherwise, no.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. And keep it local.